Hey guys, welcome to YFC Kitchen. Today we're cooking beef stroganoff. So for this recipe, we will need diced beef, an onion, a can of mushrooms, flour or cornstarch, beef broth or beef bouillon cubes that will be prepared, salt, pepper, and sour cream. So to start, we actually need to cut our onion up. So we're going to take our onion, we're going to cut the end off, and peel the outside paper and maybe even the first layer of actual onion off of it. You're gonna cut it in half. And then you're gonna take those halves so they're flat on your cutting board, and you're gonna cut it into slices. And then you're also gonna cut it the opposite direction as well so that you have small diced, like cube-like pieces. So now we're gonna move over to the stove and we're gonna turn it on to a medium-high temperature. And we're going to begin to brown our beef in a little bit of oil. For this step, we don't actually need to cook the beef completely all the way through. We actually just need to brown the outside of the meat because we will be cooking it a little longer once we add more ingredients into the pan. So while you're cooking, you want to make sure that you stir the meat around so that nothing burns to the bottom of your pan, and to ensure that all your pieces of beef actually brown properly. You'll begin to notice that certain pieces, especially smaller ones, start to look brown faster, but you really want to make sure that all of your beef is brown before we move on to the next step. Once your beef is browned, or even mostly, it doesn't actually have to be completely brown in all spots. There can be a little bit of pink still. You're gonna add your broth, which should be 2 cups. If you are using bouillon cubes, you'll want to dissolve 1 bouillon cube in 2 cups of water beforehand, and your onions into this. Once you've added your broth and your onions, you want to make sure everything is well combined, and you want to see your broth starting to boil. At that point, you're going to turn it down to a medium-high heat, and you're gonna leave it to simmer until your beef is fully cooked. Okay, so now we're gonna cook our rice. And to do that, we actually need to measure our rice as per the number of people we'll be serving. So most bags of rice will say somewhere on the back how many cups of rice and how many cups of water to put in your pot in order to cook an appropriate amount. So just refer to your bag for the proper measurements. Once we know how much rice we're cooking, we will measure it out and actually rinse it in our pot before adding the water to boil it. So to rinse the rice in the pot, we actually would just pour some water over it, and then using the lid of the pot to keep the rice in, we'll actually drain that water out. So now we will measure our water into our pot, put the lid on, and move over to our stove with the rice to cook. We're gonna put our pot on the stove and turn it on to a medium heat and wait for it to boil. Keeping an eye on your meat, once you think it might be cooked all the way through, you can take a piece and maybe aim for something in the mid-size range, and just take it on a small plate and cut it in half to check and make sure that it is cooked all the way through and that there's no pink remaining. So once your rice is done cooking and you know that your meat is cooked all the way through, you're going to finish your sauce. So first we're going to actually add our can of mushrooms, which if you don't have canned or you have a really big can, is about 1 cup of mushrooms. And then you are going to take 1 cup of sour cream in a bowl. You're gonna add 2 tablespoons of either flour or cornstarch. You're gonna mix those together really well so that the cornstarch is like completely combined with your sour cream. Once that is combined, you're going to slowly add that to your meat and broth mixture. So you're gonna stir that all together. And then once it's all stirred together and you can't see any big lumps of sour cream, you're gonna slowly bring your pan back up to a boil. And once it is boiling, you're gonna leave it to simmer for about 10 minutes. So for a simmer, you should be able to turn your heat down a little bit, but make sure that your broth continues to boil with bubbles like you can see in our pot for the full 10 minutes. Once your rice is done cooking and you've finished thickening your sauce, you can just serve it by putting one portion of rice on your plate and topping it with one portion of your stroganoff. And if you find you have any portions at the end of the night that aren't eaten, they can actually be kept overnight or even for a couple of days in the fridge if you just transfer a serving of rice and a serving of the sauce into like a Tupperware or a Ziploc container or any plastic container with a lid or a glass container with a lid. And you just put it in your fridge. It can be reheated the next day if you want to take it to work or school or even just for eating at home. And that is how you make beef stroganoff.